Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast, episode number 279 of the show. This week I got 4 new reviews for you folks at home. That's going to include He Who Fights a Monster book number 4, The Otherworlder Exploring the Dungeon volume number 1, Guardians of Asterfall book number 2, and Overgeared. So all kinds of great reviews for you coming up. But before we get into any of that, we're going to start off with some LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, we just got one quick little brief story. We have some new plagiarized stories on Amazon. This one is Plagiarizing Stonehaven League. We have the cover art on the video version of the podcast, of course. I'll read all the titles to you. Advanced Fighting Fantasy, Horde of Smelly Goblins. Also, Game-Led Adventure, Davron's Home. And a LitRPG adventure of role-playing and fantasy. So if you happen to see those on Amazon and you think they sound familiar, it's because they are. They're actually all identical copies of each other with different stolen, slapped-on cover art. But they are actually taken from the Stonehaven League series. And they put like one of the reviews for the novel blurb, and that's kind of all the effort they went into. These continue to pop up again and again and again. I personally already try to one-star review all of them so that anybody who comes across them will know that these are plagiarized, completely stolen. I've also notified the author so that hopefully she can get them taken down as soon as possible. So there you go. On to stuff that is out now, stuff that's come out since the last episode of the podcast, which is a couple weeks back. So quite a long list. We're getting into that right now with Passive Power Initialization, written by Sean Barber. The author was nice enough to let us know that this is his first published book. So he's really excited about it. So go give it check it out. Also out as the author's first delve into LitRPG is going to be The Healer Always Dies, Breath of Life by M.J. Connellan. There we go. Also that has come out recently, The Retired S-Rank Adventure, volume number 4. Not the author's first delve into LitRPG, but still entertaining series. Also out is Unfrozen book number 3, the Prime War Mangus Online book number 3 as well. A Buccaneer's Due book number 2 if you're into pirate LitRPG. This is the second book in the series. Also out is Prime War Mangus book number 3. Viridian Gate Archives book number 8, Empirical Endgame, which I believe is the last book in the series, in the main series anyways. So they're actually capping it off with an actual ending. So that's very rare sometimes in this genre. Also out is the second book in the War Core series, called War Core book number 2. Also out is Foodstuffs book number 3. A new venture for Dakota Kraut, very popular author. This one is a cultivation LitRPG. It actually has both kinds of storytelling elements, called Lord January, Year of the Sword, book number 1. And according to the author's recent posting on Facebook, he's actually said that he plans to release a book a month, I believe, in this particular series. And I think the first 3 or 4, well, you can go check out the Amazon pre-release orders. We have the links for the first 3, because that's as far as we put things out. But the author plans to release a book a month, and there is also an audiobook version of this waiting for you if you like that as well. The 8th book in the Adventures of Brad series by Tao Wong is out. The World of Magic book number 3 is out as well. The second book in the Master Hunter K series, The Chosen Ones, is out. Apocalypse Online 3 out for you as well. The second book in the Loner book series, The Highway of Blades, is out. A new book from Mountain Dell Press from Maxwell Farmer, who actually was written other things independently. So this is the first book under the Mountain Dell Press company, called Virgil's Pact, a Portal Fantasy LitRPG, Dr. Druid, book number 1. The 4th book in the Snake's Life series, A Snake's Roll, is out as well. Last of the Star, Gravity, is out. Talon Rebirth, Talon Saga, book number 1. The Enora Unleashed book number 3 series is out. The 5th book in the Warlords of the Circle Sea, Dragons, and a 4X strategy LitRPG series, out for you. Enjoy if you've been enjoying that series. The second book for Angelus Maximus, Betrayal of the Arcani, book number 2, First Trial, is out. The Winterborn book number 4, Queenslayer, is out by Stuart Gross. This is his more traditional, just like fantasy adventure series. So I've always appreciated that the author has a diverse line of stories, including evil, chaotic, neutral good, or neutral evil, I suppose, with like, adult stuff. And it goes all the way from the spectrum over to this side, which is more traditional, a little more mainstream. So there you go. I've always appreciated his variety. Also out is Apocalypse Snipes book number 1, as is the City of Mass book number 1, Fall of the Dungeon House by John Stobalt. Unimagined Adventures, Whispering Crystals series book number 3 is out. The Realm Between book number 10 is out. If you enjoy that series, the 10th book in the series is out now. A book from Tony Joy called Disillusionist, a LitRPG misadventure, Fetch Quests and Bog Gods. It's out. Don't judge a book by its cover, I guess. The cover art's not amazing, but hey, give it a shot. Also out is Secret of the Old Ones book number 2, Airship Privateer from Blaise Corbin. So a lot of fans have been looking forward to that one to come out eventually, and it has. The author finally put it out. It's doing really well. So if you like book number 1 in the series, book number 2 is out for you to enjoy. Also out is Eternal Dominion book number 2, Traction. And there are all the stuff that's for ebooks that's out right now. Onto audiobooks, if you're an audiophile. This is the section of the podcast for you, new LitRPG audiobooks, including Mana Harvest, Magic Crops Duology, The 2-Week Curse, a LitRPG fantasy series, Time Drills book number 1 by Michael Chatfield. Now I want to give a special note here is that the author's not simply re-releasing the books with a new cover art or something. I've seen that number before. We don't usually feature those on the podcast because they don't give you anything new. In this case, the author is actually re-releasing the audiobooks with a new narrator. About midway through the series, the original narrator had to leave. There were issues that's beyond the control of either the narrator or the author, and so he had to switch narrators to a different narrator for the rest of the series. So now he's going back at his own cost, hiring a new audiobook narrator, the same narrator that did the last half of the series, I have to say, to redo the first half. And so it's a very expensive process, but the author loves his fans. He loves his work and loves making things consistent for you because, believe it or not, readers and listeners will complain if there's a shift in an audiobook narrator and they don't like the new narrator or it conflicts what they think characters should sound with in their brains. And so to alleviate this, Michael Chatfield has gone out of his way again to re-release the first half of the series so that the narrator is consistent throughout the entire series. So kudos to him. And I believe the author had mentioned some particular, you can download the older version if you really want to, before the new ones come out, and we have a copy of that if you really want to. Okay. Also out right now is an audiobook, Lord January, which I just mentioned, from Dakota Kraut. Also, this trilogy is broken, book number 4. It is definitely broken as it's not a trilogy anymore. This Plot is Bananas is out for you. Pangea Online, Death and Axis. This is on another re-release, actually, Pangea Online books 1, 2, and 3 from Soundbooth Theater. I believe this is going to be I forget what it's called, a full cast thing. So you're going to have multiple narrating voices, background noises. I think it's called an audio drama. Don't quote me on that though, but it's available online for the first 3 books in that series. Definitely go check it out. Some of the theater stuff is amazing. Also, a Battlefield Reclaimer, Guardians of Astrofall, book number 1, as is the Forbidden Zone, the System Apocalypse, book number 11 from Tao Wong. Space Seasons Omnibus, book number 1 through 3. 1 through 4 rather, is out as an omnibus for you to enjoy. The Reincarnated Core Volume 5 is out. The Genesis Games Volume 2 is also as an audiobook, as is the 8th book in the Discardium series. Dungeon Alaria, book number 2 is out, The Creator's Daughter. The Blighted Quintessence, Crucible, book number 2 by the amazing C.M. Carney is out for you to enjoy, narrated by Nick Podell. And this last one is actually a little bit different. It's not on Audible directly yet. This is a product from Soundwave Theater in combination with Shimmer Kuznets, who's written some amazing LitRPG stuff. This is from his Earth Force series, and they're doing these almost episodic pieces. Inexpensive purchases. They are going to be through Soundwave Theater's platform. They actually developed their own publishing platform, so you don't have to depend on Audible or Amazon, and they also make these books less expensive for you as a listener. So I definitely encourage you to go check it out. They have like free samples. I believe the first book might be discounted in the series, and they plan to release regular episodes for you to enjoy on a regular basis, and they're really inexpensive for this particular project in particular. So they're nice little nuggets of sci-fi literary goodness from the amazing Schumer Kuznets, but narrated by the full group of Sambu Theater. So lots of great people there. So definitely go check them out. You're helping to support an indie audiobook producer and platform. Okay, that's all the stuff for their upcoming audiobooks. We have upcoming LitRPG, which is all the stuff I found for pre-order release for the next couple months, January, February, March. And here we go. We're just going to start off on this. It's going to be Otherworlder, Epic Battle Blade, book number 1, January 25th. On January 26th, it'll be The Viceroy's Pride, book number 2, Invasion. The first book in that series is out now, obviously. On January 26th, Serious Probabilities, book number 3, The Dungeon of Chance, all-in Dungeon Core novel. January 27th, a new mech literary series from Ryan Tang called Mech Slasher, Captain Overdrive, book number 1. Dragon Riders of Lan is out on January the 30th. Climbing the Dragon's Tower, book number 2. On January the 30th as well, it's going to be the RPG Apocalypse, book number 2. On February the 7th, it'll be Adventures on Brad, book number 9, The Royal Ending. On February the 8th, it'll be The Houndsman, book number 2. On February the 8th as well, it'll be Dungeon Heart, Hellgate. I'm not sure what book in the series this was. I want to say it's like the 3rd or the 4th, but it doesn't say on the cover art. On February the 14th, it'll be Black Centurion. On February the 14th as well, it'll be Drone Captain, a sci-fi literary Drone Rising, book number 2. Book number 1 in the series was amazingly received. A lot of folks loved it. I haven't had a chance to pick it up, but a lot of folks are looking forward to book number 2. February the 15th, it'll be The Legend of Randall the Ghost Hound, book number 2. I like book number 1. I'm looking forward to book number 2. February the 16th will be The Year of the Sword, book number 2, Lady February. This is Dakota Kraut's new Cultivation literary series, book 2 in the series. On February the 17th, it'll be Chaos, Sparta Online, book number 2. February the 22nd, it'll be Blessed Time, book number 3. February 22nd as well, it'll be Defiance of the Fall, book number 4. February 25th, The Discardian, book number 10. February 28th, Alpha Physics, book number 4. March the 1st, it'll be The Dreadlord Wizard, Badges of Dorkum, book 1. March the 1st, it'll be System Finale, the 12th and final book in the System Apocalypse series. On March the 1st, it'll be Outranked with them all, book number 5. On March the 1st, Age of Iron, Rise of Mankind, book number 2. March the 2nd, it'll be Prime Numbers, Sigma World Online, book number 6. March 2nd as well, it'll be Anything, Full Murder Hobo, book number 2, by Dakota Kraut. Man, that guy has a very full publishing schedule this year. March the 8th, it'll be Primal Hunter. On March the 9th, it'll be Dr. Druid, book number 2, Virgil's Fire. I might have mixed them up. This might be the second one from that series. March the 11th, it'll be The Impossible Task, Bone Knight, book number 7. March the 14th, The Buccaneers Do, book number 3. March the 15th, Apocalypse Cultivation, book number 1. March 23rd, Year of the Sword, Dokeshi March, which is the 3rd book from Dakota Kraut in the Year of the Sword series, out in March, just like Dokeshi March. Get you sensing a theme here. March the 24th, The Good Guys, book number 13, Flex in the City. On March 29th, A New Home, An Unwitting Prince. On March 30th, the last book on our release list is going to be Unfrozen, book number 4, Killer Play. So that's all the stuff I know that's coming out in the near future. And of course, if you want to let us know about anything you plan to publish, any of your pre-order link, or something you published and I just missed, that is LitRPG, of course, feel free to shoot us an email at feedback@geekblatspodcast.com or at litrpgpodcast@gmail.com. Either one of those will get our attention, or you can shoot me an email or a message on Facebook. I'm usually on there, checking messages, scrolling through videos, interacting with fans, that kind of stuff. Okay, on to new releases and reviews. Okay, first up this week is going to be He Who Fights With Monsters, a literary adventure written by Shirtaloon, a.k.a. Travis Deverell. It is 868 pages, a massive novel for just $6.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. In the wake of an unexpected homecoming, Jason questions if there's still a place for him in the world he left behind. Forced to confront what he has become his time away, he feels more alien than ever. But his old world is hiding secrets that he never knew. As he starts to unravel what has been hidden from him his entire life, he discovers that not only might he fit in better than ever, but he may be exactly what the world needs. There you go. Short and sweet and to the point. I've actually read all the other books in this series up until this point, but I got busy and I've actually started to get like eye strain from reading too many screens. And so I actually picked this whole one up as an audiobook. So this section review of the audiobook version of this in particular. And I don't know if it was just the way that this audiobook came out. I don't know if the other audiobooks are as good, but I really like this. I actually thought this particular entry in the series was great. And I don't use the term lightly. It's getting an 8 out of 10 for me, spoilers. But it really turned out to be a great audiobook experience. The stellar narrator just added an extra level of amazingness to the story, especially because it is a very dialogue-heavy story this time around. It has less action, which is a complaint from some reviewers, actually. But for me, like, I didn't really mind because the audiobook narrator made each one of those characters come to life, and especially Taikidi, I'm probably saying it right, Taika. He just good voices all around. I really enjoyed how well the voice acting was done. It made the dialogue really enjoyable, helped pass the time, and the character development within the story really made it, for me at least, the noticeably less action in the story, at least compared to the other books in the series. So for me, made a great experience. The story itself, I actually appreciated that the background of the story, where it takes place, actually changes at the end of book 3 in the series, and in the last book rather, book 3. The final state of the main character was a little in limbo, and it's kind of a cliffhanger. And at the very beginning of book number 4, they make it clear he's been brought back to Earth. This isn't spoilery; it's in the novel description, but he's back to Earth, and he has some potential powers if he chooses to accept them. And most of the story revolves around him, returning to Earth, what that means for his interactions with his family, especially because he has retained all the powers that he's learned. And so he's essentially kind of a super powered person with levels and experiences and all those, ranks and everything and all those powers. And what that means, because he's on the other world, he'd killed a ton of people to survive and to live. And he developed a survival strategy that meant him, pushing the limits. Otherwise, the other guy was going to do so. And so a lot of the story revolves around him sort of readjusting his mindset to Earth standards, and what that means for how he deals with things and interacts with not only the people who may be potentially enemies, but also the people he cares about, his family. And that magic and Earth may not be as mundane or empty as he thought it was. Again, not spoilery in the novel description. And there are other story threads, but I'm not going to spoil them because they're entertaining. But those things were enough for me, at least, with some very widely spaced, interspirited action scenes to be a really entertaining story. Again, noting that there are a couple reviews that said that this is, again, dialogue heavy, action light, and that's absolutely true. For some people, that's going to be a deal breaker. They might not enjoy the story as much, especially if you're reading as an ebook. But for me, because this might just be the audiobook edition of it, but the dialogue was very funny and entertaining, a lot more so than I think it was when I read it. And I might just listen to audiobook because they're coming out at the same time now as the ebook. I think the dialogue just like not, picks up, and not for me at least. So, but that just made my experience with the audiobook in this particular, edition of the story, because it is dialogue heavy. Overall for me, great story. Giving it, again, an 8 out of 10. So that's He Who Fights Up Monsters, book number 4, with a score of 8 out of 10. Okay, next up is going to be The Otherworlder, Exploring the Dungeon, volume number 1, a light novel, written by Hinagami Asami. There we go. It is 330 pages. It is $8.99. It is not available on Kindle Unlimited. You can only buy this, and that's because it's a translation of a story that's already existing. And here is the novel description. Ready for anything except this. Strapped for cash, Soya signs up for a shady gig straight out of a video game. Warp to a fantasy world with a team of experts and ascend a dungeon tower to make off with its spoils. However, an accident in the transfer process leaves him stranded there alone. Desperate for support, he recruits a host of adventurers, from elven sisters banished from the forest to a goddess of deception and secrecy partial to a lazing about as a cat, to form a party that can brave the tower's perils. Co-op between corrupt nobles and merchants outside the dungeon and deadly monsters within, can this motley band rise to the challenge? Or will Soya adventures end before it even begins? There we go. That's actually a pretty succinct description of the story. First of all, I kind of gave this a shot. I've been seeing a lot of these stories that are translated from like Korean and Japanese and Chinese that are light novels originally. And so they've been translated, and it's an expensive process to do in trans. So I understand the high price tag. And they're translated in English, and sometimes they do really well. But a lot of times, because they're not in Kindle Unlimited, I don't always know if they're going to be LitRPG. So I decided to give this one a shot. I looked at the cover. I'm like, it kind of looks like a notification there screen. I recall maybe like reading this as a manga or something, or as an online webcomic, and I gave it a shot. It's not actually LitRPG. And as I'm reading the end of the story, the author like mentions they actually go out of their way to minimize anything game light intentionally, because they wanted to focus on the stranger and the strange land kind of aspect and the character development more than just like action, LitRPG game stuff, even though they're not using the word LitRPG. So the best you get in that aspect is the fact that this is a very familiar kind of setup. It's an Isekai world where the main character is transported to this magical fantasy world. And he goes dungeon diving, on tower diving, fights for resources, a little bit of adventure here and there, but it's kind of a minimal part of the story. And there's an adventurer guild that's sort of set up to organize these things, and they give characters different levels of like rankings and stuff. And there's like a kind of, I'm gonna say progression system, but like a way to record a person's abilities and skills and who their deity is, so that everybody in the party knows that they're being truthful about who they say they are, essentially. But that's kind of the only like hard-coded progression in the story. There's like a little bit of power progression, the main character getting new equipment and getting new allies and just becoming better at what he does, as far as like dungeon diving or his interactions with this world. But that's as far as you get for progression, unfortunately. And so for me, that was a little disappointing, but there are other aspects of the story I think people will find kind of cute. Again, most of the story is, again, kind of a stranger in the strange land kind of aspect, where the main character, who's supposed to arrive with like this team of researchers from Earth, arrives alone. Everybody else either dies or is sent somebody else. Is not clear in the novel. He gets a robot AI companion to help him out a little bit, to like do food preparation, analyzation to make sure he can eat things, some emergency first aid. He has rations and weapons and stuff from Earth. But it really is him trying to figure out how to survive in this world and how to interact with the locals, and what are their structures for societies and rules and interactions with the different species. And so there's a lot of like nice world development, character development, and interaction with this world. But that's a lot. That really is what a lot of the story is like the main character just learning how to change and how to interact, and the relationships that he develops with these other characters. Sometimes, a lot of times, female. But again, it's cute, it's light, it's not a heavy story, and it's a light novel, so it's kind of what I expected. But the relationship development is probably going to be the biggest draw for readers who like that kind of stuff. Probably not the action adventure. That's definitely on the minimalist side of things. Overall, the story misses for me as somebody who loves LitRPG. Those aspects just didn't exist, and not that the story said it was, but I would have loved to have seen that part of it a little bit more, obviously. But even discounting that as far as a negative, a big thing for me is the fact that it's a really expensive story. It's almost $9 for 330 pages, and for me, who likes to, I think a reasonable page value is like a penny a page, which for this book will come out to like $3.30, 4, maybe 450, I suppose, which is probably the upper limit for me. But this story is almost twice that. And I understand that translating expensive, so there is an extra cost there. But for me, I didn't think it was worth the expensive price tag. Had this been on Kindle Unlimited, or if it was just like a slightly lesser price tag, I think it would have squeaked by with like a low 7 score, because it doesn't do anything wrong. And by the end of the story, I thought, okay, that was a cute ending, with the way his interactions ended up ending developing. But for now, unfortunately, at this price point, it just wasn't worth it for me. So it gets a score of 6 out of 10. That's The Otherworlder, Exploring the Dungeon, volume number 1, light story with a score of 6 out of 10. Doesn't quite work for me at this particular price point, but it might work for you. You never know. So there you go. And next up, we have Asterfall, Guardian of Asterfall, book number 2, written by David North. It is 830 pages, $5.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. Book 2 of Guardian of Asterfall. Enchantments, ruins, and ancient power. These will determine whether Sam Hastern survives in his new life. He and his father have fought their way out of the Abyssinian plains and returned home stronger than before. But Asterfall is never peaceful for long, and the tiny village of Cliffsend is no longer a place they can live. Sam's journey will take him to the distant city of Highford, where trouble is stirring beneath the mountains known as the Three Crowns. There, ancient ruins are coming to life beneath the light of Asterfall's triple moons, promising either a route to power or an untimely grave. Will Sam be able to protect his family from the dangers of Asterfall and prevent the breaking that was foretold, or will he fail in his most important duty? Ice lifts, outsiders, and the strange powers bound in the second volume of the epic series. There you go. That's a pretty decent novel description. I'd say some aspects of the story have improved from book 1, and some kind of dragged down a little bit. Overall, though, still a very good, entertaining story. I like book number 1. I like book 2. That's the easy, simple review. The aspects that the story probably improved the most for me is in the point of view narration, storytelling aspect. In book number 1, especially in the beginning of book number 1, the story shifted point of view so many times. And it really wasn't always clear whose point of view it was, unfortunately, that it was a little hard to get through that beginning section of book number 1. In book number 2, most of the cleared away. Most of the story is told from the main point of view of the main character, which for me makes the story more streamlined, helps me to see whose point of view I'm looking at, if it's going to be an unreliable narrator, that kind of stuff. And it's just like easier to follow along on that aspect. So big plus for me. All the other things I liked about the story are still there. Monster fighting, adventuring, are big aspects of the story. There's still the crafting and magic development aspects that I enjoyed from book number 1. Main character continues to develop his unique class, which is a combination of magic and crafting. I'm always a big fan of crafting. The aspects that it kind of lessened my enjoyment in compared to book number 1 is just kind of the variety of enemies felt a little bit lacking here. In book number 1, there was the theme of most of the main adventuring taking place in an underground location. And so the monsters were themed like that. In book number 2, you can tell that the story is still themed. Instead of like having a large variety of monsters because they're in the big bad world and super wide, there's sort of most of the conflicts are restricted to this ice location. Well, not necessarily a bad thing. The theme monsters kind of fit in that a little too well. And the way that the story develops, like the adventuring and action, eventually kind of loses its tension for me a little bit, especially towards the end of the story. And I stopped feeling the main character was threatened and wasn't going to lose. And just a slight bit. So for me, it loses a little bit on that end. But overall, still good adventuring, still good development with his family and in the new allies in his group. And how the world building is developed. Very nice still. I was happy to see that continued on to make the story interesting. So all that was nicely done. So overall, for me, it is still a good story. Plan to pick book number 3 when it comes out. And it gets a score of 7.6 out of 10. Only just liked it slightly less than book number 1. Asterfall, Guardian and Asterfall, book number 2 with a score of 7.6 out of 10, which is still a good review score. Next up is Overgeared, the webcomic. It has an official English publisher, which is going to be Tapas. Link in the show notes. It has 57 official chapters released. However, on other locations and other sites we're not going to give a link to, but you can look it up on the internet. It has over 100 chapters. So, this is a very long running series. So you don't have to worry about running out of things to read to read. Here is the webcomic description. Shin Yaguo, aka Grid, is an unlucky man in life and a low-level player in the popular VR game Satisfy. He finds a powerful item that earns him a rare legendary class title, Pogma's successor. He's now a skilled blacksmith who can forge unique weapons and equip the game's most powerful gear. Grid resolves to use his new abilities to achieve fame and fortune, but as his very existence begins to stir up trouble and Satisfy, he realizes that life as a legend may be more than he bargained for. So there we go. I should also mention that on Tapas, you get the first few chapters for free, but then you end up having to pay to unlock the new chapters. So there we go. This review is for the webcomic version of the story. I tried once I saw this and I thought I liked it. I tried to look at up the light novel version of it, the translated version, and it was not for me. It was not well translated to me. And that actually may be because there's a version of this on Amazon, and I don't know if it's official, because when I look up information on Overgeared online, it says that World has the English rights to this story, and the version that is on Amazon is not from them. So the one on Amazon may actually be a pirated version, but don't quote me on that. I don't know for sure. But take your chances, I suppose. But the official version is apparently through World. So you want to support the author there and pay for it, you can go to there, check out the actual written light novel version of this, or you can again pay for the webcomic version from the official English publisher at Tapas. Okay, I actually I'd seen this online for a number of months, and just from the cover and from the name and from the description I had read earlier, it didn't seem that interesting, mostly because I didn't see that original novel version. That's something separate from Tapas. But it just didn't seem interesting. I thought this was about online players, overpowered, and that kind of story isn't generally interesting to me. And it wasn't until I ran out of other things to read online that I decided to give it a shot. So I had over 100 chapters. I'm like, anything that continues for 100 chapters can't be entirely bad. And so I thought I'd give it a shot, and boy, was I surprised. This is probably one of my most favorite reads for webcomics, at least, in like the last couple months. And that's mostly because it revolves around crafting, which I was surprised to see, because most stories in the webcomics that I've read recently, the manhwas, just that's not really a focus at all. Most of them are action adventure or returners, people who are gaining power rapidly, cultivation stories, and almost none of them have any kind of crafting. And this story is almost entirely focused on crafting, the adventures, intentions, and actions, and quests to go along with that. And I think it does a really great job of keeping the story interesting without throwing the crafting aside. A lot of times in crafting stories, an author will have a hard time kind of balancing creating tension with crafting, because crafting is inherently in a video game very button clicky, especially in an MMO, which the story is set in. The author, I think, does a really good job of setting up scenarios where it's like, oh, there are odds or consequences for him, and he's having to struggle with this situation and the challenges that come across, even though they feel a little forced sometimes. It's still, like, for me at least, it has been a very entertaining read. I'm not all the way through all the chapters. I've only gone up to like 40 at this point as of this recording, but I've enjoyed every single chapter, and I look forward to reading the entire thing at this point. I don't know if it drops the ball somewhere down the line, but for me at least at this point, it's been super enjoyable, and it really does satisfy that need for me at least of the LitRPG aspects of like game notifications. The MMO game actually matters. The guild stuff on the story exists, and the quest system is really important. The NPCs matter, like the reputation aspects. And so all the actual game elements really do matter to the story, and there's at least a sense of interest and tension and conflict in the story that isn't necessarily always revolving around action. And there is action here and there, but there are other kinds of conflicts that still make the story very interesting to me at least. And the crafting stuff, I'm always a fan of that. I love crafting stories. I've written some, and so it's a part of the genre that I really like. And so for me, someone likes that aspect. This is definitely hits hits on all the spots for me. So far, the story again has great crafting with adventure, making equipment that is kind of overgeared to make it first low level compared to the challenges faces, and the game and the fame and the associated with those kind of problems. So good stuff. Again, game mechanics are everywhere. Lots of notifications, lots of class stuff. The MMO aspects, guilds, groups, auction systems are all aspects of the story that are important. And the artwork on this thing is real crisp, right? That's one of the things I always have to take into consideration when looking at a webcomic or a manga is the art good? Because that really does affect how much I enjoy it. So if the artwork is totally crappy, even if the story can be good, I don't enjoy it because it's a visual medium. And this time, in this instance, very nice, crisp, clean line work, artwork, vibrant colors that convey the action very well. And again, lots of notifications and game elements that actually show this is LitRPG, as far as at least we're describing it. So really good stuff all the way around. Overall, great story that I'm really glad that I decided to finally read. That's going to get a score of 8 out of 10 for Overgeared. Okay, that's it for the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for listening, for watching. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, our website at LitRPGpodcast.com. You can also catch the show if you just want to download it on Spotify, Audible. They're getting the latest episodes. Some of the other podcasting apps have just not updated, unfortunately. But you can also find all the latest episodes of the podcast if you just want to go to our website. They're there all the time. You can download them to your phone, or you can listen to us again through Spotify or Audible and get them sent to you on a regular basis. So that those are the ones that are working the best. But you can also, again, watch us on YouTube. That's updated on a regular basis as well. So there you go. We also have links in the show notes for other Facebook pages where LitRPG authors and fans and readers all kind of intermingle. So if you want other good recommendations, or just to talk to your favorite authors, these are the places in the notes to go to. And again, if you enjoyed the podcast in any way, shape, or form, and you want to support us to help keep us free and ad-free and keep us going, you can find all the ways to support us at litrpgpodcast.com/support. Okay, thanks again, folks, for listening to the show. And until we can hang it again, remember to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.